I just want to commend and thank the Senators Ruane, Senator Higgins, Senator Flynn and Senator Black for bringing forward this bill today. And it's an important piece of legislation that we are and the Labour Party are fully supportive of. When the Institutional Burials Act 2022 was passed through the Oireachtas 4 years ago, it was a victory for the tireless campaigners, undoubtedly survivors and families of Tuam and other mother and babies' homes. And it was their work, the work of the likes of Catherine Corliss, who's been mentioned here rightly so many times tonight, that uncovered the facts of the burials at Tuam. The Act was a vindication of years of work and a step towards justice. But it wasn't perfect, and it's many of those same campaigners who then, and in the years since, have pointed out the significant issues with the legislation that was passed 4 years ago. This is a bill with a simple aim. This is why we fully support it, to make real and promise of justice for survivors and the family members of people who died and are buried in institutional lands. All of us in the House can agree that this is a worthy aim. The 2022 Act sets a very high legal threshold for intervention. What this means in practice is that it's extremely difficult to authorise state-led interventions at institutional burial sites other than Tuam. And I know you explained, Minister, your reasons for your raising another amendment, but maybe as a result of just how effective the campaigning of those in Tuam was, the 2022 Act was very much drafted with Tuam at the forefront of their mind. Several of the criteria for interventions it includes are referential to the context at Tuam, and that is the effect that other known or suspected institutional burial sites cannot meet those criteria. Justice and closure is therefore being denied to survivors and family members from other sites, and I don't believe that this was the intention of the 2022 Act, and it certainly isn't in line with the spirit that underpinned that legislation. But this bill seeks to put this right. It would expand and strengthen the state's powers granted to the state under the 2022 Act. In doing so, it would bring other institutional lands into scope for investigation and intervention if inappropriate burials are likely to have occurred there. The core aim here is to make sure that the state can intervene appropriately in cases of suspected inappropriate or undocumented burials linked to religious institutions. And we already accepted this concept in the 2022 Act, and in passing that Act, the Oireachtas accepted the state's role in responding to the legacy issues by intervening in inappropriate burials. And while the bill was in effect largely limited to dealing with the Tuam site, I don't believe a case of justice and closure in Tuam, but nowhere else, would ever have been acceptable to campaigners, families or indeed to legislators. So in taking action on this issue and passing the bill, the intention of this House was that justice would be open to all. And this bill is about making that intention real. That's why I am deeply disappointed to see the government's amended today. And I don't think this should be a partisan issue. I think discretion is very much evident within the bill, and it should be an issue that we should, I think, agree in this House. The government claims that this would lead to speculative interventions. They claim it would create a lack of clarity and they would be out of proportion and not in the public interest. But what I think the government is failing to recognise is that the situation now is leading to a lack of clarity, and the situation now is not proportionate. The situation as it exists now is quite simply not in the public interest. Tonight, Minister, the government seems to be suggesting that by broadening the scope of the 2022 Act, we would open the floodgates to a larger number of poorly evidenced interventions. And I don't think it's fair to say that there's such little faith to have in families and campaigners who had to fight for so many years to finally get this far. The suggestions that allowing for interventions where inappropriate burials are likely to have taken place will lead to disproportionately large amount of actions. I don't think that's true, and I think it's insulting. It was only through the sterling investigative work of Catherine Corliss that the burials of Tuam ever came to light. Government over successive decades were none the wiser. Now the government is presumed to tell campaigners and families that they can't be trusted to know where similar events are likely to have taken place. So it's a deeply disappointing amendment and a deeply disappointing stance for the government to take. Like I said, we have full support, the party have full support of the senators in the Civil Engagement Group and of course the tireless campaigners who have kept the spotlight on this issue. I really hope, Minister, I know that you're very open to discussions, Minister, and I hope that you would reassess your position and back this bill. Because I think it's and get that real closure can happen for families.